A hot topic this year has been a lot of self-care, a lot of self-love, reflecting, and a lot of reading books. And as we only have around 2.5 months left of the year, I thought this would be the perfect occasion to talk about books. And I do this kind of often in my videos. I always mention what I'm currently reading, but I thought, why not make a video where I show you everything I read in 2025 so far. But before we get into that, let's set the mood, get cozy, get comfortable by making ourselves a little chai latte. Look how perfect and foamy that is. Let's try it out. That's good. It's been quite a while since I've lit a few candles in my apartment, but I think this week, since I've seen the leaves are changing colors, it's really giving real fall vibes for me now. It's taken quite a while, actually. It's been very sunny and summery here, which I'm not complaining about at all. But I'm not the weatherman, and that is not what this video is about. I say we jump right into it. The only way I've really been able to track everything I'm reading, the books, is through this one app that I did speak about at the very beginning of the year. My dear friend Helen recommended it to me, and I've been using it ever since. It's basically an app called Fable. It's kind of similar to Goodreads, but apparently in a better way. I don't know, I've never used Goodreads, so I can't say, but what I'm hearing is that it's even better. And you can track what you're reading, what you want to read, what you've already read, you can rate it. So many things you can do on this app. And one of the main things was, for me, at the beginning of the year, I set myself a goal. I wanted to complete 12 books. One book for each month. I felt like that was reasonable, and I felt like that would be a good number for me. I like to read, but I'm not like a pro reader. I'm not someone that reads 5 books every week. So I felt like that was a realistic goal, and the reason I'm doing this video today is because I have met that goal. I'm currently at 13 books on my 14th book. So a little tap on the shoulder for me. So one of the first books I read this year was actually written by an author who is the mom of my brother's classmate or old classmate or something. So someone I don't personally know, but my parents know. So I was really interested in reading an author that's in my surroundings. Her name is Jenny Runesson. She's Swedish. And the book in Swedish, at least, is called Tolken, which translates to the translator, kind of. Because it's basically about, it's this mystery murder book, and you don't really know if anything happened. There's someone who dies right at the beginning of the book, and it's a bit uncertain if it's a suicide or a death. And basically it's about this Swedish family, or this Swedish couple, so there has to be a translator that comes in and helps with the police and everything. So I don't know if it was just me really enjoying the book because it's situated in Luxembourg, which is where I was born and I've grown up and I know, and shout out Luxembourg. And then it was in Swedish, and it was about Swedish people in Luxembourg, hello, me. So maybe, I don't know if it was just that I really liked about it, but I also am very interested in like murder mystery books. I feel like they're always the most fun to read for me. I never really get bored of them. I feel like they are always grasping your attention and easier to read in general, harder to put down. So I always know that if I'm in a reading slump or I haven't been reading for a while and I need to get back into it, the book that's really gonna do it for me is most likely a murder mystery book. Let me know if you're the same. Let me know if you have like a favorite book of all time. Write it down in the comments too, because I would love to get more inspiration. And if it's like your favorite book of all time, then that has to be a really good book, right? So I want to read it. Moving on, after that, I read the book called A Little Life, written by Hanya Yanagihara. I'm absolutely butchering that. I had seen this book on social media, on Pinterest. The cover was very intriguing, the story as well. And basically it's this book about a group of friends, and you get to know a little bit about each and every one of their lives. But then there's this main character, Jude, who has gone through a little more struggle. His childhood was very rough. A lot of things happened, and it's very deep. It's very emotional. He has this deep childhood trauma that just follows him throughout his adulthood. You really get to know the story from, at least for the main character, from his like childhood all the way till he gets to be like an old man. And for the other friends, you get to know them from their teens, 20s, also till they grow old. You get to really follow along their whole life stories. But it is quite a depressing book, and sometimes I felt it was a little repetitive because like it's quite a thick book. I don't know if it's like 600 pages or something like that. And sometimes I felt like you would hear the same thing over and over again, but at the same time it connects to how the person is feeling, like it goes in circles. But I did feel very depressed after that, low-key. After that, I went back into some more murder mystery vibes and read The Housemaid, which also saw so much on social media. It is written by Freida McFadden, and it's basically about a housemaid who comes into this family's home to work for them, to clean for them. But the more time goes by, the weirder things get in that house. The daughter of the family, which is quite a young child, is also like really weird and low-key mean towards her. And it's just like a lot of weird vibes going on. So it's really fun to read because you're just like constantly asking yourself, what's gonna happen next? Sometimes I'm just like, get out of that house, but you'll see that she can't. So I really want to try and describe a little bit of these books, but not too much either, because I don't want to spoil anything, first of all. And I just want to say like my overall feel, okay? So for this one, I mean, I did read it in probably less than 48 hours. So I was just like, I could not put this book down at all. But for some aspects, like there are some like romantic relationships that happen, adventures, but I think those moments could have been developed further because it kind of felt very vague and also a little bit childish, if I can say that. And just some things would be like repetitive. You can go deeper into that emotion, but like I said, read it so fast, and I've heard so many other people that have also read it like in a day and stuff. So this is probably a great book for if you're also like in a reading slump and you want to get back into it. The Housemaid. I have yet to purchase the other, I think there's 2 other books that are kind of like continuation, but I feel like if I buy those, I will also just read them so fast. Next book I read was actually just a book that I had picked up in a random store. I read it quickly. It was like, I read the back of it pretty quickly. I was like, okay, I'll just pick it up, like we'll see. But it wasn't from any author I'd heard of before. I hadn't heard anybody speaking about the book before. So I wasn't really sure what it was gonna give, but at the end I gave this book 4.5 stars, which is probably the highest rating I've given in a while. I don't usually give super high ratings, I'm not gonna lie. But kind of similarly to A Little Life, it is a quite depressing book. But actually, let me read what it says here on like the back cover. Charlotte Davis is in pieces. At 17, she's already lost more than most people do in a lifetime. But she's learned how to forget. The broken glass washes away the sorrow until there's nothing but calm. You don't have to think about your father and the river, your best friend who is gone forever, or your mother who has nothing left to give you. Every new scar hardens Charlie's heart just a little more, yet it still hurts so much. It hurts enough to not care anymore, which is sometimes what has to happen before you can find your way back from the edge. A deeply moving portrait of a girl in a world that owes her nothing and has taken so much, and the journey she undergoes to put herself back together. Kathleen Glasgow's debut is heartbreakingly real and unflinchingly honest. It's a story you won't be able to look away from. So again, a lot of childhood trauma, and she has to face a lot of challenges, I can tell you that it starts out with her being in a mental institute and then leaving and trying to live in the real world again. So it's a very difficult transition. But even though I said it's depressing, it's also really beautiful and you see a lot of love as well. I liked it a lot. Okay, I think I read it pretty fast too, and it was also a bit of a longer, bigger, thicker book. The next one is a little bit of a random one. It's a French book called La Sixième, which is basically the sixth, but it stands for sixth grade. I don't know if it's the same for the English or US school system, but it's by Susuie Morgenstern. And I think it's actually made for children to read. It was just a random book I found at home, and I was like, I don't know why that's in my library at home, or if I've even ever read it. And maybe I have, but when I was much, much younger. So I don't think it was my age group, but since it was in French, it was good for me to read in French just in general either way. So a bit of a random one. Next book, please. After that, I also went for another book I already had at home that I know I had already read because I had read it in school. But I was like, let me read it again, because books I read in school, most of them did not finish. Because when you give me a book to read and I have a time limit on when to finish it, and you tell me I need to analyze all the characters, the story, this and that, I'm disinterested. I'm not going to be interested in doing that. So this time I was like, you know what? Let me reread this and actually take my time if I want to take my time and do it well this time. Because it's a classic. It's The Stranger by Albert Camus. So I was like, let me read a classic for once, because I never ever really do that. That's what I did when I was in school. And since I didn't love reading in school, I don't really want to go back to that. But I challenged myself to do that. Because it is a classic, for me, it is a little bit still of a confusing story. And I want to say yeah, you should read it. But I'm only saying that because it's a classic, I think. Other than that, I'm really just confused a little bit. So maybe I need to reread it. But the book after that was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I think he's Greek. That sounds like a very Greek name. Which was a great book to go on after that. And I actually read this because with a few of my friends, we decided to create a little book club. So we wanted to get books and read them at the same time and talk about them afterwards. So this was the first one we did together, which was a really good one. I absolutely loved it. The ending was just so good and such a plot twist, and I live for that. But at least it was a good ending. It didn't leave you on a note where you're confused and you're still asking questions, but it was also mind-blowing. So I absolutely loved reading it. It was really hard to put down. It was an easy read as well. Nothing complicated about it. And as it's called, The Silent Patient, it is about a patient that has been put into psychiatric care because it is thought that she potentially murdered her husband in a really gruesome way. But ever since that happening, she has stopped talking. That's why she's called The Silent Patient. So you follow along with this therapist who is new at this workplace, and he just really has this mission of like, I'm gonna get her to talk. And he really wants to put his mind to it, because all the other therapists have given up on it, and they're like, whatever, she's just never gonna talk again, we'll just take care of her, but that's that. And he's like, no, I'm gonna crack the code. So it's really interesting to see like if he makes progress or regressing and all these things. I love the book. I loved it so much. I cannot recommend it enough. But it's also weird things happen, plot twists, like I said, the craziest plot twists. After that, moving on to a more regular book that is not about murders and mysteries and all these things, I read The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, who was actually recommended to me by Helen once again. It was a really interesting book to read, very eye-opening, because it was basically about these twins who decide to live separate lives, or it's more one of the twins decides to escape from her family, from the town she's always lived in, from everything she's always known, to live in another city and live as another person. Because basically they grow up in, they grow up in this really small town together. There's a southern black community, and they are way more light-skinned than everybody else in that community. So basically what happens is one of the twins who decides to run away, live a different life, she goes on and lives her life as a white woman, as pretending to be a white woman, as going, or not even pretending, because like when you're mixed, you're both, you know? But this is back in the 1950s. This goes back to the 1950s, where there's still like segregation. Black people are not seen as the same as white people. It's still in that era. So seeing how she decides to put on this role of like being a white woman, and then the other twin who decides to stay in her town, stay where she's always been with the black community, and seeing the difference. But the thing that you need to know is that the one who's representing as white, she is hiding everything from her childhood, from where she's from, like all that stuff, because obviously she has to do that. And also, you get to follow along their lives. I'm not going to say more than that, because or else I feel like I'm going to be spoiling, but really good book. Really interesting to read. I really enjoyed it. After that, I was like, you know what? Let me get into a little self-help book, because I've just been reading a lot of like literature, romance stuff, murder stuff. Let me get into something that maybe will help my life out a bit. And if you know me, one of my favorite self-help books, or probably my favorite self-help book of all time, is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. I feel like after reading that book, it really opened my eyes. I think I've grown personally a lot after reading that. It's really helped me to grow, to be more out and open, see the world in a different way. So after that, I was like, I have to read her second book, which is called Feel the Fear and Beyond, Mastering Techniques for Doing It Anyway. So basically it's a continuation of her book. She does sometimes talk about some things that were already mentioned in the first book, but I didn't love this one as much, mainly because this one is much more focused on lots of exercises. So in the book she puts like lots of different exercises you can do, little homeworks for yourselves, challenges, all this stuff, which in theory is good, is nice, but I was just trying to read through it and I wasn't really doing the exercises like at all. So maybe that's my own fault because I wasn't doing the exercises. But it was also so many exercises that if I were to do them, it was like it would be too much. I didn't feel it was realistic for me. So for me, I thought it was not as good as the first one because it was a lot more practical than theoretical in a way. It wasn't as much ways to think. It was more like do. So I don't know. Could be good, could be less good. For me, I was just trying to read. I wasn't trying to do so much. Especially I was like at work whilst reading this book, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna sit down and like do exercises whilst I'm having my break at work. But the first book, I 100% recommend for anyone and everyone. No matter where you are in life, even though you think maybe you have it all figured out, I don't care, read that book. So then continuing on from that, I went into another self-help book, which actually my mom recommended for me. But this one was a financial one. It's called Rich AF by Vivian Tu. I didn't necessarily read all the chapters, but I have an excuse, okay? A valid excuse. And that is because it's about financials, it's about how to deal with money, how to make money without doing anything, like all these really interesting things, how to invest, how to save money, all these things. Really interesting, really good, but she is also especially talking about the US, which has a very different system from Europe, or for me specifically, like Luxembourg or whatever. So some things are just like not things we do here. I don't know. For pensions, we're good as long as we're working. Like, we're good. We don't need to save for a pension necessarily because our jobs do it for us. And 401k, we don't have that stuff. So there was just some stuff like that I skipped. But overall, like the general information, the general way to think about money, the general idea of it all, so good, so interesting, so eye-opening as well. And there's these little things too that in the back of the head you know them, but having them reminded, you're like, wait, that's so true, I need to do that. So just these little things, great tips, really good. And she's known to be like your rich BFF on TikTok or something. So the way this book is written is also like really easy. It's not like a finance bro, economics class 101. It's easy, it's fun, it's Gen Z language a little bit. So I recommend that for absolutely everybody as well, no matter where you are in life. Okay, after that, I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, who actually a book I'd seen a lot online. Helen had recommended it to me. I saw my friend Alice had read it too. So I was like, okay, I bought it. Let's try it out. At first, it's kind of a fun story. It's about these authors, two authors specifically. They're hanging out. One of them is this like really famous, successful author. The other one is trying to get there, and she hangs out with the other one, but she's low-key jealous of her, but then also is like hang out with her. It doesn't really make sense. But that like super successful author ends up dying. Okay? And then the less successful author starts becoming more and more successful. I didn't love this book. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really like what happened, the ending, the certain like getting away with stuff. I didn't really like it. I'm not gonna lie. Guys saw it everywhere on social media, but it just wasn't for me, and sometimes it's like that, and that's okay. You know, you can't like everything, right? And then now we're getting to more my summer reads, which this time was a book called Anybody Out There by Marian Keyes. This was a book I just found at home. I believe it was my mom's. I believe it was my mom that bought it like so long ago. And I was like, well, let's try it out. Let's try and read what we already have at home instead of buying new books, was my thoughts, I think. And I think for a summer read, it was what I was looking for. Very light, little funny, little mysterious at times too. But yeah, just a light summer read, basically. That's what that was. Not much more to it though. Like, I don't know if I would say I recommend either. It was nice, it was easy to read, and it helped time pass by. Like that's what I can say. And then I actually ended up finishing that book, and I was at a hotel, and I didn't bring any other books with me, but they had this tiny little library where you could leave books, and I think people had left their books there after being on vacation, and you could just read them, bring them with you, whatever. So I found this book called The Club by Ellery Lloyd. It was the only book that seemed interesting out of the 4 books I could choose from. But I really wanted something to keep reading on my vacation since I had been reading every day and I was in the flow. And I was like, okay, I can't just like stop my flow here. So I picked it up, and even just from the cover, I could see that it was murder, mystery vibes. So I was like, okay, like I'll probably like this, whatever, it's fine. And that it was intriguing, it was mysterious, murders are happening again. You get thrown into the first chapter, a murder happening and everything, and you obviously have no idea what's going on because you don't know the characters yet, you don't know who's who, you have no idea what's happening. And then the next chapter is like taking you back all the way to the beginning of the story. So I quite like the like back and forth of it. I know that when I was a few years ago, I hated reading like that. Now, I don't know, it made sense for this book. So it was nice. But yeah, it was kind of like sinister. There were some plot twists too, but I love a good plot twist. So that was fun. And that brings us to my current read, which is very difficult for me, okay? I mean, if you watch my summer vlogs, you will already see that I'm reading it in my summer vlogs, and now we're in fall and I'm still reading it, which not great because I've tried to get into another freaking classic, and this classic stuff I just don't think is for me. It's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, except for that I've decided to pick it up in French. This is how much I read. Because it's a classic and it's in French, I was setting myself up for failure here, I think. But I found it in a thrift store for 50 cents along with a few other French books. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself to read more in French. This maybe wasn't the best book to pick up for that purpose. And I just like every time I think about reading, I'm like, oh, I have to read this book. Because I'm someone that if I'm reading a book, I want to finish it until I start a next book. I'm not just going to stop here and then start reading a new book. I just don't do that. So I really every time push myself to finish my books. And this one, girl, is challenging. So if you have any tips on how to make this easier, please let me know because the girl is struggling. But with that is all the books that I read this year so far. Hopefully we will get through that book and read more before the end of the year. But I don't know, there's a lot now with school and everything. But I feel like there's always time for reading. You just need to make the time, like a little before bed, instead of scrolling. That's the thing, you have to make that choice of like, okay, I'm gonna stop scrolling to read. That's not always easy. And I totally get that. So I think my best tip for getting into reading is finding an easy book to read. So like something you will like, if that's the genre, if that's the way it's written, if it's the author you already know you like. That, putting away all distractions. Put your phone on airplane mode, throw it across the room so you can't see it anymore. I don't know, get cozy. If you want to get in your couch or in your bed, light a candle, get a cute little beverage, create a whole mood around it. And then if you're someone that's like feeling like you really never have time, try to read in like the moments of, for example, if you take public transportation to your work or to your school, read whilst you're on the bus. If during your day you have a 15-minute break, instead of just scrolling, read your book. If you're waiting for your food to cook, it's in the oven, there's still 30 minutes left and you've already done the dishes and everything, read your book. So I think just there is really no excuse of the you don't have time. It's more like you have to make the time and you have to find the right time for you. So if you have any other tips, definitely write them down in the comments, share them with us. But that was everything for this time. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!